I just had this idea, and I honestly think it's a very, very good angle to argue from. You, as an antinatalist, do not even need a child. Even a natalist, you do not need a child. You already have one that you have neglected every single day for as far as you can remember. You. It's you. You are that child. The field of psychology itself is built on a lot of substantiated and unsubstantiated assumptions. The idea that trauma originates from the developmental years is pivotal in psychology and psychiatry. It is incredibly, incredibly important. So, your psychologist or your therapist or your psychiatrist is whispering to that child inside you. They are trying to create a connection. And while you can say it's a psychological, it really feels like such a spiritual thing because, like, how do we ever really grow up then? We just grow into ourselves, but we don't grow up. We grow into ourselves. We layer ourselves, and we find new things to identify ourselves with. And you can have hobbies as a kid, of course. I'm talking about socially layering yourself. Who you choose to hang out with, who you choose to be seen with, who you choose to date, who you choose to avoid. We're all just layering this stuff on and on and on because as a child, you learned, oh, these guys do this to me, or they say this to me, or they do that, or do that. So I'm going to direct my life like this without knowing the consequences of those actions, without knowing whether or not they will add on to your trauma again and again and again. And it seems like a lot of the time that's what it's doing. So if spirituality and psychology they're they are based in the child, the inner child. They are based in healing the inner child. And here's the thing, you yourself might not even be in that kind of situation because you already exist as your inner child. And the trauma that you accumulate is literally, you react the same way a child would react because you're that connected to them. And you should be. Don't ever think that you should be disconnected from them. You should be, right? You react in the same way. And I really believe that is the distinction between somebody who's of high empathy, is how in tune they are with that child aspect of them, right? And I just say it as a stage. It's not like, it's fixed like child, then teen, then adult, then middle age, then senior citizen, right? These are things that are probably there for socioeconomic reasons rather than like actual meaningful designations, right? If we spend all our fucking money on therapists telling us that oh yeah, actually your dad did this, or your mom did this, or maybe your siblings were the one who did this or that. Like the it's the cause. Like, is it discovering the cause, or is it discovering the rationalization? Because I've said before, and it's the reason why I say I don't give a shit about anybody's sob story anymore, in the sense that people now use their trauma to traumatize on a huge level. Huge level. All somebody has to say now is, I'm traumatized because this and this. And it might be true. It probably is true. The point to which you get of recognizing why your issues exist and why your issues persist is a very fine line. Because once you say, I do this because of daddy issues or mommy issues, do you want to keep doing that? Yes or no? If you don't want to keep doing that, you have to find a you have to find a way out. No one else. Psychologists and psychiatrists can only take you so far. But you have to find your way out of that fucking entangled maze of bullshit. And it seems weird to me that through all that entangled maze of bullshit, people actually decide, yeah, I'm ready to have a kid, right? You haven't even finished parenting your fucking self. And you think you can be a parent. I haven't had the chance to ask a natalist, but if they believe in people giving birth, I'd want to ask them about prisoners, violent prisoners, homeless people, drug addicts, prostitutes, and psychiatric patients, like chronic psychiatric patients who are like in and out of a psychiatric facility. If all those people should be allowed to reproduce. If their answer is yes, they should be allowed to reproduce, that just tells you this person is completely fucking morally bankrupt. Completely morally bankrupt. Completely. If their answer is no, why shouldn't they reproduce? Because they're in this situation or that situation or that situation. Okay, yes. So you believe in antinatalism, just selective antinatalism, right? And if you can establish that somebody believes in selective antinatalism, keep marching them down that road. And the reason they won't acknowledge that they don't want those people to reproduce is because they oftentimes are damaged beyond repair. And I say damaged in the sense that we're all damaged. I don't say this to be like, oh yeah, those, just cast them aside. No. They just so happen to wear that damage in a way that we can see it for ourselves. And that's why it's so easy to stigmatize people like this. It's this world that turned people into that. Human beings don't turn themselves into outcasts or monsters by themselves. It is the psychopathic institutions that people have attached their entire family lineage to, their entire sense of self-worth, that turn people into monsters. We live in an age where Islamic extremism, at least in the past 20 years, has become the new Red Scare in terms of In the 90s, it was communism. Now it's Islam. And the thing about Islam right now, the Islam of the past 150, 200 years, coincidentally, is incredibly more hardline than most forms of Islam that have existed throughout history. Incredibly so. And the existence of Israel has only amplified that. I don't want to get into that right now. But this type of extremism in terms of Islam, I mean, yes, it still has that like bloodlust of the Abrahamic religions, don't get me wrong. But in this form, it has not always been this hardline. And the worst part about it is how martyrdom has reemerged as such a pivotal mark of belief. That a child is born and indoctrinated to the point where they believe that they have to kill the non-believers. But it's not just the non-believers, right? It's not just, it wouldn't be just Christians or Jewish or pagans, whatever. It can even be other Muslims. Because that is the whole concept of brainwashing. It is conformity to a cellular level, such that something that sounds like it could create doubt in your mind or in the mind of other believers must be eradicated. So many Muslims have died from perceived blasphemy. What kind of person does it take to brutally kill another person because of perceived blasphemy? Their inner children, the inner child of such a person, if they're not completely cut off or if they're not like just dead, they are buried under so much trauma. So much. And these are people, I'm just saying Islam right now, but even Hinduism right now is entering its fundamentalist, hyper-conservative, this radical phase, quite openly so. It's fucking scary to see, honestly. It's really scary to see this kind of shit happen. So, what would you say to the inner child of somebody like that? You basically indoctrinate a human being into an attack dog, right? The moment they hear this or they see that or they, just trigger signals, right? It will trigger them to react and react violently. Sometimes it won't even be that. And let's even take another example of social interactions. And I've talked about selective empathy before. And selective empathy is more dangerous than psychopathy and narcissism and sociopathy. By far. Because most people out here are not narcissists. They're not. They are selectively empathic. They're selectively empathic. That is what makes somebody incredibly dangerous. That. And having to navigate modern social dynamics themselves has made so many people depressed, anxious, and suicidal. Sometimes all three at the same time. How bad How fucking bad does social interaction have to be creating such an uptick in mental illnesses like this? Such that people can't even feel like they're even human to other humans. And it could be something so pathetically insignificant, like maybe a speech impediment, or maybe like acne scarring, or even your weight, or your just things that, okay, I do think you can control your weight, absolutely. I've been a fat fuck most of my life, but I've also worked out, and it's just thermodynamic. I don't even need to bring my experience into it. You just gotta watch what you eat and just keep active. Weight is a lifelong process. Health is a lifelong process. I don't know why people are so indoctrinated into instant gratification, right? 6-pack abs next week, right? But you know what I mean. You get what I mean, right? Physical traits, right? The way you speak, or it can be any of that kind of thing. That is enough of a reason for other human beings, right? These selectively empathic human beings that I'm talking about, to be incredibly savage to other human beings. Right? If you want to factor in bullying and now the violence, but let's not even talk that. Let's just talk the social interactions. And to that effect, most people are even fucking depressing to be around anyways. You have to wonder, like, you are fighting to fit in with a bunch of people who don't even like themselves. Why would you want to hate yourself even more, right? Sometimes it really, really dawns on me that if you're that connected, like for me, it's weird because even if I think about how I thought when I was like 16 or even like maybe 10 years old, it hasn't changed that much to me personally. And I think that's a very good thing, which means my inner child is still like learning. And I think by learning as well, you can connect with your inner child very quickly. Like, I don't react to things any. Okay, yes, there is growth, right? There is definitely growth to that extent. But it's probably more to do, yeah, is growth knowledge plus experience? Or is it just the physical manifestation? Right? I think that's why I keep expecting too much from this fucking world. Because I still have that like childlike element of optimism. I keep expecting this shit to be different. But it won't be. So even if you have that sense of like loneliness or isolation as an antinatalist, just literally remember that you have an inner child. And I think it'll take you very far.